Major support for these broadcasts is provided by New York Community Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chelsea Lighting, Capital One Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Genova Burns, Giantomasi and Webster, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, the Wyckoff Group, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, Bruce Mosler, C.B. Richard Ellis, Colliers International New York, LLC, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, DDG Partners, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Flushing Bank, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, John Katsimatidis, Red Apple Group, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knackle Realty Services, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Sterling and Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, and these friends.
So they call it Brooklyn. Brooklyn is the place that I was born. Brooklyn is the place where I was educated. Brooklyn is the place that I love. And today, I have brought together the most distinguished, interesting people who are going to tell you what's happening about Brooklyn. My guests today include the Honorable Marty Markowitz, the borough president, who cannot be the borough president. There's only one Marty Markowitz and the cheerleader for Brooklyn. Mona Gora, who's the principal at Golden Lioness Corp. Joshua Muss, who's the chairman and the CEO of Muss Development. And last but not least, my friend Peter Meyer, who's the market president for TD Bank, still America's most convenient bank. So, Mona, you know, you've been in Brooklyn a number of years. How do you get involved with Brooklyn? Were you born there?
I was not born in Brooklyn, but I got involved about 1995.
So what made you go in 1995 to Brooklyn? You know, 1995, we didn't have my friend as the borough president. 1995 was not the greatest time. Downtown Brooklyn was, you know, there was a little headache.
It was a little shaky at the time.
So what brought you? What was the visionary that brought you? It wasn't Muss, because, you know, he's been there longer.
Actually, my father was involved in some real estate in downtown Brooklyn, and I had always done Brooklyn properties in the surrounding area, and we found an opportunity at 32 Court, and
32 Court.
Dove in.
Now, 32 Court that's a landmark building?
It's currently in the landmark district.
Process. It's in the landmark district. But 32 Court Street, you know, and you look at it this way, Josh, when did you build your building in downtown Brooklyn?
We started the construction in 1997.
And when did you originally plan?
83.
Oh, the traditional Muss situation, 83 to, you know, it was only 14 years, it was better than normal.
We weren't sitting on our hands.
No, I know you weren't sitting on your hands. But when you built and when Mona's bought the property over there, what was Brooklyn like? Because Brooklyn has changed, has really done so well.
I would say that if somebody went to Brooklyn in 1983 and they were blindfolded and brought back today, they would have no idea where they are. Unless you brought them to Brooklyn Heights or places that have not changed, which is one of the exciting and wonderful things about Brooklyn. There are places that have changed completely, and then you have some of these established neighborhoods that are spectacular, that never changed at all.
So what do you attribute the change over? I mean, and let's go back to 83, 95, 97, and even a number of years ago that you've been on my show. What has made the change to Brooklyn so vibrant?
Well, I have to say I've lived in Brooklyn all my life, and I've always found it a special
Thank God
place.
you're older than me, you know?
I am. I've always found it a very special place, and even during our challenging times, the borough was a dynamic place to live. I have to tell you that. But obviously, the art community, the creative community, has nested in Brooklyn. There's no question that they have brought an energy that the borough needed to inspire investment and involvement and to create the energy that I think really spurred on a lot of the good things that are happening today. By the way, as great as Brooklyn's doing, there's still too large of an area in Brooklyn that is not doing so great. But we're concentrating today on the areas that are doing well. But I think it's given the investment community a belief that the investment is a good one in Brooklyn, that it's going to make the returns that they need for their business. So I think one hand feeds the other. The crime rate reduction, and there has been in a large part of the borough a substantial crime reduction, and that's inspired others to move into Brooklyn where they feel it's a safer community in which to live. Many property owners have reinvested in their properties because they see a greater possibility of a profit in terms of the folks that are moving in that can afford the level of rents and or mortgages that make their business more of a incentive to be involved in. So there's a lot of different reasons. Peter can jump in on this.
Peter, besides being the market president for the New York City, you've been in Brooklyn a number of years. You've been there when the old Commerce Bank entered Brooklyn. How has the bank grown? Where is the business coming from? What's happened in your different roles? Have you seen?
Well, you know, I think first of all, you know, Marty's correct, and you know, Brooklyn has changed in many ways, and in some ways hasn't changed all that much. It's still a great place to raise families. It's a great place to work. A lot of people knew that before. More people know about it now because we seem to have been found. You know, GQ calls Brooklyn the coolest place on the planet, coolest city on the planet. From a banking perspective, you know, I was in banking for 20 years in New York City before, mostly in Brooklyn before I joined Commerce Bank in 2002. We brought the bank here. It was largely considered a suburban bank, and you know, high quality of service, long hours, good product, all the things that a lot of retailers really didn't think would work in an inner city environment. And since that time, not only Commerce and then subsequently TD have we expanded and done wonderfully well and embraced by the community. But other retailers have found the same thing.
I mean, right now, you know, let's look at it this way. There have been some new leases with H&M and other people moving into downtown Brooklyn. You know, you have Century 21, which is the highest grossing per square foot in Manhattan, maybe in the nation. You know, they're moving from Cortlandt Street going into downtown.
Although they started in Brooklyn.
I agree. They started
Bay Ridge.
in Bay Ridge.
And they all live in Brooklyn, so let's understand that.
Yeah, and they all can't watch the show because they only have DirecTV because they can't afford, you know, to pay for cable. But they do watch the show on the internet. But why has there been such a dynamic growth? You know, and Josh, you've seen it because when the office building opened and the hotel, there was no hotel. It was 40 years before there was a real. I mean, there isn't a hotel. You were the first over there, the major hotel, and the official hotel for the Barclays Center, which is opening up on September 28th. What have you seen over the years in Brooklyn? And you grew up in Brooklyn.
Well, I didn't grow up in Brooklyn. Actually, my bona fides is as follows. My grandparents came to Brooklyn. My father was born in Brooklyn. My wife was born and raised in Brooklyn. I have children in Brooklyn, grandchildren in Brooklyn, and a great-grandchild in Brooklyn.
Yes, I realize.
I was maybe conceived in Brooklyn. Having said all that, and I don't know if I should have said that, I think the excitement of Brooklyn right now is that what Brooklyn does have is a diversity of neighborhoods and a diversity of housing and a diversity of business, which is not present elsewhere in the city, if not in the country. from, as I said before, from the excitement of all these new buildings that are going up in downtown Brooklyn. You still have these exotic, unbelievable neighborhoods that are hundreds of years old. So you have a tremendous diversity of style, of people, and I think that people are finding out, and by the way, downtown Brooklyn specifically has one of the safest crime statistics in the entire city, if not the safest.
But that wasn't always the case. A couple of years ago, downtown Brooklyn was not a safe neighborhood. I still remember walking, I'd say 5 years ago.
You know,
with
Michael,
Timmy King.
we don't dwell anymore on the past. We're dwelling on the present and the future. And what is past was something to conquer, and I think we have successfully done it.
I think you have.
And I think that the banks and the retailers and the people who want to live do not think Brooklyn anymore as anything but a positive.
I think Mona has a great story because Mona is developing in Williamsburg. I remember I was at the ribbon cutting, and I think Marty was there too, when Ron Molis and RD Development put the building at Northside Piers. And I still remember there was nothing on that side of Williamsburg. There were thoughts, there was a great redevelopment plan, and they put up this building with Toll Brothers, and who knew? I mean, Williamsburg today, it's hot. I mean, this is the place. I mean, Marty and I are not allowed because of our age to go
and the color hair we have, no piercings or tattoos visible anyway, but go ahead.
You took the earring off, okay.
That's on the north side, but on the south side, there's a lot more families that are coming in. And actually, there's a tremendous amount of development now on the other side of the bridge, on the south side, where on Broadway, there's tons of new buildings going up. So everything's moving from the north side, where it was a lot of artists, really young kids.
Now, where are these people coming from?
If you go on the weekend now, you'll see people that are coming from Europe. It's a destination to go to Williamsburg. Everybody wants to be in Williamsburg.
I mean, I had Jed Walentis on a couple of months ago, and he had opened up the White Hotel.
Yes.
And he said to me, "It's doing great." Yes. I mean, but needless to say, the Marriott at the Brooklyn Bridge is the hotel. It is the official hotel of Brooklyn because it's you have the catering, you have everything, and it's
I think there's place for everybody, though.
I think there's everything. But you know what? Besides downtown Brooklyn, what Josh did a number of years ago when he took a place that I still remember as Brighton Beach Baths and, made this the Oceana. I mean, that's dynamic, and I mean, it's sold out and everybody wants to be there. And, hopefully he'll be building maybe another property over there. But we were talking prior to the show with Marty and Peter about Coney Island, and I grew up very close by. I went to junior high school in Coney Island, and Coney Island, it's still not there, Marty. Well, one of those neighborhoods that you said, yeah, I think it's great. You have great bones, you have great water, you have the cyclones, you have other things.
Listen, I wasn't the city planner back in the 1960s during the Mayor John Lindsay era, and the men and women that decided that Coney Island was to be cut off from the rest of New York City, and let's build a certain type of housing and just cut the island off and forget about it. I just came back from Istanbul. I've gone there several times, and I marvel at the way that they celebrate their waterfront. And I come back and I say, what could have been here? What could have been anywhere in the world? The closer you are to water, the more valuable it becomes, the more desire. Anyway,
look at Williamsburg.
But that's then, and this is now. So I think Coney Island has great potential. There'll be new buildings being built right outside of Seagate on the boardwalk that will be market rate housing. I'm hoping that a significant portion of it will be for active adults over the age of 55 that are now empty nesters. And rather than run out to the suburbs somewhere in an adult community, that we can have it right here in Brooklyn. Increasingly in Coney Island, people are purchasing or renting properties as a second home, meaning rather than to spend 3 hours from Brooklyn or Manhattan to go out to the Hamptons, guess what? You can make it in Coney Island like that. You've got the boardwalk, you've got the ocean, and by the way, the last time I checked, our ocean is pretty much similar to what the Hamptons ocean is. So the bottom line is that really you could save the toil and the trouble of going out there when you can stay right here locally. There'll be an expansion of the amusement area. There is no question about it. Zamperla has done a superb job and is investing further in terms of new rides and attractions. The parachute jump will be relit before the end of next season, and that'll be under their supervision as well. And I hope not the Ferris wheel, the the carousel they're fixing it right now to restore it right by Steeplechase Plaza. And then if we get a casino, and I'm hoping an amphitheater for seasonal concerts, Coney Island is going to be the place. And I'll end it on this. New Yorkers need an affordable, accessible place for families and young people to have a place to go to in the city. And Coney Island's got it all. Anywhere you go in America, you have to pay big bucks just to park your car to get into it. Here, you're right there in the city center.
But here's an interesting question for two people who are in development. Mona, who owns office buildings and has developed in Manhattan and is also developing in Williamsburg, and for Josh, who is similar, in many things. How would you look at Coney Island today?
I don't think she's thought about
I haven't been to Coney Island recently.
Okay, no.
Actually, I did go to the ballpark. There was a ballpark that I just went to on the water. A few weeks ago I went there, and actually I was quite impressed.
Right, but my question is, what Josh did, not Brighton Beach from Coney Island is 2 miles?
Well, yes.
Okay. And what he has is a magnificent situation in Brighton Beach. Do you think, if you bought land in Coney Island, do you think you could build the same thing? And then I want, as the banker's point of view, of the feasibility of financing this, and with regard to that.
I could tell you very quickly that almost anything that is not in Manhattan these days is difficult to finance, and I'm sure even in Manhattan it's difficult. That's something that has not changed and is endemic to all.
It's called equity. You need to put more money in it.
Yeah, well, that too. And the fact is, development money is almost non-existent. You have to show cash flow. See, he's nodding very quickly. Coney Island, as a market rate, I think is possible. Depends on what subsidies are available, and you need subsidies. I think that it still is a little bit edgy, and not because of the housing so much as I'm not sure of the juxtaposition of an amusement area, and it is sensational how it's come back to family and upper level housing. And I'm not sure that it should be committed for that, but I can't answer that. Nobody thought that we would ever succeed in Brighton Beach either.
I agree, and that's why I bring it up. Now, Peter, you have how many branches in Brooklyn?
We're opening up our 18th in Greenpoint tomorrow.
So you have 18 branches in Brooklyn. Where do you, and TD has grown to this level, where do you see the next best horizon or best opportunity in Brooklyn? As you bring up Greenpoint, and I think Greenpoint...
Won't share that.
No, he's not one of there's no other competitors over here. Where do you see, certain people tell me it's the Wick. They call it Bushwick. It's Bushwick. And some people say to me, it's near Pratt. But no one has said to me it's in East New York. But, they're maybe in certain parts. Where does, and the bank has done some structured thing. And then you're also, with your Chamber of Commerce thing, where do you see growth in other parts of Brooklyn?
Well, yeah, you do see that the growth that had happened in Williamsburg is spreading now. And neighborhoods that 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you said, well, gee, could I put a bank in there, are they're great places to think now. If you look at, I'll give an example of 7 years ago, we put one in on 5th Avenue in First Place in Park Slope. And everybody thought we were crazy at the time because it hadn't been built up. But now it's Restaurant Row. There's a huge community around it, lots of families with strollers. That type of activity is happening in Bushwick. That's happening in areas of Ridgewood. We've got sites that we're looking at in City Line. And one thing that Brooklyn has is great infrastructure. And families and working people need infrastructure. They need to be able to travel to work. And if you look at where the growth is in the borough, it's really along those lines. We have 18 now. We'll open up another 4 within the next 9 months, but we've plans to put 30 to 35 stores in Brooklyn over the next 5-6 years. It will be to that level, and we think that that's supported with the demographics. We've seen a lot over the 20 years before we got here. There was a lot of consolidation. So you had 4 banks on one corner that became one, and then they left. But those areas are coming back again now, and we're sort of ahead of the curve in getting in on it.
I mean,
Keep your eye on Red Hook.
Absolutely.
I think that's we're on the cusp of a major change in that community.
what do you attribute that to? I mean, I think Red Hook is great.
First
I think
off-
what IKEA did and Fairway have done great.
But what it is, it's an interesting location because you're surrounded by water. You're almost on your own island. It's true, by the way, somewhat isolated from the main island, so to speak. And it attracts a certain type of creative, literary, it just sculptors. Seriously, it's attracting that kind of new restaurant that just opened, the Crab Shack, whatever it's called, right opposite Fairway. You can't get in there, hours to get in. I just think it's a certain type of life there that will be the next major growth area, and certainly the Clinton Hill area. Bed-Stuy is ongoing unbelievable change. I mean, if you would have said to me, I can't even describe what's going on there. Dramatic shifts. And Brooklyn is always about shifting demographics. The neighborhood I grew up in Crown Heights, was one way. Then it became changing, and it's going back, slowly back to what it was when I was in the 1950s. Different, but it's an interesting shift of what's occurring in the borough. And the folks that are coming in, and I don't minimize, not that you are the Chinese community, I happen to believe that the Chinese community will be the most successful, most affluent ethnic group that Brooklyn and New York will have in the next 20 years, 25. No question about it.
I mean, you bring up the Asian, the Chinese,
question.
which is, I had a trip, I think you know Michael Meyer, at TD. I went to Flushing in July, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I mean, Flushing is unbelievable. And what's happened, and Michael was explaining to me, that merchants who are in Flushing want to own their retail stores. They buy the retail stores. Everybody wants to own in that neighborhood. And, it's so huge. And, there is a need for, all different populations throughout the city. And there are great opportunities. And I think, and what has happened in Flushing in the growth, I think something that has to be happening in Brooklyn, it's in downtown Brooklyn, there's no question, is there's a need for urban retail. And as you know, as you brought up before, Century 21, they started in Brooklyn over there. And there are other parts of Brooklyn. But, retail is segmented. 13th Avenue, you can't go into Borough Park. I mean, every bank wants to be there. There's a different market over here. Brighton Beach, different than the Brighton Beach I remember, okay? I don't speak Russian or read Russian signs. But I think the growth is there. And I think, Marty, it would be inappropriate with a show that's going to air on September 24th if we don't talk about the Barclays Center.
I think Josh wanted to say something before.
No, I just keep in mind that right now, New York City is the magnet for the entire world. And when people want to settle down, they're probably going to look to the boroughs because of affordability and because of permanence. And so you don't know what's going to be in a year or 5 years. Who would have predicted 10 years ago? So I would say that Brooklyn is certainly ripe for an explosion anywhere. It's like the big. There's no space here that's going to burst there.
I think that where Marty talked about the shifting sands and shifting demographics, in the Asian community, the Asian community is growing faster in Brooklyn than it is in Flushing.
Absolutely.
And that's changing the dynamic of the borough. Sure. But if I look at just from site development from a bank point of view, 10 years ago, if you told somebody that your next branches were going to be in Bed-Stuy, Fort Greene, Bushwick, and Clinton Hill,
we call that, they would have said you're Meshuggah,
Well, exactly. So there is a dynamic that's happening here that's unbelievable, and I think you're about to talk about the Barclays Center.
I mean,
and how
let's-
And don't forget,
historic that
retail
is.
follows their customers.
Yes.
So the retail will follow as the demographics change, as the affluence increases.
I mean, Ken Bernstein from Arcadia has
follow
been
it.
on my show. You know, when he opened up in Canarsie, you know, and in Sheepshead Bay. I mean, to have 200 events already planned for the Barclays Center, I cannot believe it.
Yeah,
I mean,
very exciting.
It's very exciting.
It's very exciting, and I have to tell you that Bruce Ratner, when I began this journey with him, to his credit, after not being responsive to many calls initially, he was kind enough to. I don't know whether he wanted to do it, just get me off his back. But he made the call to.
I got a call from you once too, but I thought you were crazy.
But I just knew that of course the difference between Bruce and why he's so successful and me, he saw a whole development project from one end of the yards to the other. All I saw was a team and an arena. That's all I saw. But he saw something much greater than that. But I think I'm particularly excited, not only about the excitement, I'm excited that 1,000, 2,000 people will have full and part-time jobs there. The very jobs that we need for the folks that are most in need. And it'll give them a chance to have a good job, decent job. And that'll help them build so that they too can become great successes in life. And that's what we need. We need more and more work for the folks that live in East New York and in Brownsville and East Flatbush. We have to get jobs to keep them busy and to keep them employed and having a living wage so that they can raise their families. And that lifts all the boats in the entire borough. So this is great. We're doing great. But it's not the whole story. There's still this whole other part that begs for our continued attention, really.
So what's that part?
Well, that part is the continued bringing in. We've got to bring in, I've asked the mayor, just like he's done for the Institute for Applied Sciences, Roosevelt Island, and certainly NYU on J Street.
NYU and
But
Poly.
I want to do the same thing and shift it off and to tell the companies in Japan and Korea, here's what New York City is going to do. We're going to give you the land. We're going to give you the land, $1 a year, and we're going to help subsidize in terms of energy and things like that if you agree that for X amount of years that you're going to build a facility here and put people to work. And that means either warehousing or assembling, okay? Because those are the jobs that we need, the high-tech jobs we need for the future, but for today, we need the jobs to put people back to work.
Right, and if
for the jobs that they're able to handle.
Right, and if we have the jobs, we have the housing that comes with it, we have the hospitality that comes with it, we have all of the other industries.
And self-esteem, which is the most important thing of success, self-respect and self-esteem. That's what proves to be successful for an individual.
Agreed. I think that when you look at the amount of retail that's coming into Brooklyn, just like the Barclays Center, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, people said, well, you could not have an arena. You couldn't have this type of retail. But that was the thinking, and Josh said, you stop thinking about the way things were and the way things are and they can be. And I think we've shown in Brooklyn that now we've got every suburban retailer wants to be there. And that adds to the workforce. And you've got the services that will build out around that.
Now that we're getting Streisand, by the way, I still want Neil Diamond. He's never performed the Brooklyn. Carole King's never performed the Brooklyn, and Barry Manilow. So those are the four that have never performed in Brooklyn. Now it's time for them to come home. So Barbara's the first.
I mean, you know, we can have
That would
that
be
Brooklyn,
great.
you know, it's like the cantorial concerts from years ago, you know, on 13th Avenue with Koussevitzky. We will have the Brooklyn legends coming back to the Barclays Center.
Yes.
And
For their first time. They've never performed in Brooklyn, these four. This is Barbara Streisand's first time performing in Brooklyn.
There really wasn't an opportunity. There was no
venue.
Wasn't right. There was no.
Right, that's why. No venue. So it's funny, huh? All these years we finally having it. We deserve it all, too.
no, you
Come
know,
on.
look,
Whatever we get is not enough anyway.
you know, there's only one, Brooklyn, and you know that's the reason that I brought all of you together today to really talk about Brooklyn. And I hope that maybe because I don't have any contacts, you'll be able to get me tickets so I can go to the Barclays Center and see what happens and tour it. And I'd like to thank the Honorable Marty Markowitz, Mona Gora, Josh Muss, and Peter Meyer, and I'll see you next week.